worked for a small engineering company very soon after I graduated, but that was only for less than a year. And then I was fortunate to join Williams when Frank was restructuring after leaving Walter Wolf, and they were running a March at that time, but Patrick had already started work on what became the FW06.
How did that come about? An ad in the back of Autosport?
It was literally just that, yes, and I went off for an interview in the old carpet store in Didcot, and I'm not sure how many other competitors I had, but I was fortunate enough to get the job. I think more due to Frank than Patrick, actually, as it turned out, but and that was where it all began. And Patrick had done some work on the FW06, but really the rest of it was done between myself and him. I was very green, not really knowing a lot about race cars at that time, and Patrick was just a tremendous guy to learn from, and was a really good mentor for me in my early years.
And not only were you a design engineer, but very quickly you became a race engineer out in the field.
Exactly. It was there weren't many engineers, and I think that first year there were only two of us, myself and Patrick. So when Patrick was starting to look at the FW07, I did the race engineering role for some events during the summer of 1978, and then became full-time race engineer at the weekends thereafter, and was doing design work during the winter and during the rest of the week.
And you won Williams' first Grand Prix, '79 British Grand Prix.
I wouldn't say I won, but when the car was fantastic, obviously, that year, and that Silverstone was where it really came into its own, I think. And obviously Alan Jones on the other car was leading quite comfortably and should have won, but he broke down. The Renaults hit some trouble and allowed Clay to take the victory quite comfortably in the end. So that was quite a nice day for both me and the team. And after Frank's struggles over 10 years in the sport, it was tremendous for him.
And you actually have the green sheets still from that race?
I was very kindly, Aaron Sue, who bought some of the Williams cars, and Jonathan Williams allowed me to have that, so that's pinned up on my wall at home.
Tell me about the Carlos Reutemann era. That was very much Neil Oatley, Carlos Reutemann.
Yeah, that was an interesting experience. I mean, Carlos is a very unique character. I mean, I've not really come across anyone quite like him since then. And very much a contrast to Alan Jones, who was his teammate. But he was a tremendous enthusiast for racing himself, and I don't think of anyone come across any racing driver with such a memory for the sport and his own particular career and the cars he's driven since then. So, yeah, a very unique character.
And you used to, and I remember it, Patrick would be in the debrief, Frank would be there, and there'd be a lot of chat with Alan. And there'd be very little conversation going on between you and Carlos, but there was a lot of visual, facial expressions which said it all.
Yeah, I think probably both that and in the car in the pit lane as well. That I think we got to know each other quite well, so you could understand with just a few words what was
or
happening.
A hand gesture, yeah. or a this or that.
Yeah, I think those were the days before radio, so we just had an intercom, or if Carlos wanted to particularly make a point, he would normally grab hold of my head and pull it into the cockpit just to make sure I could understand what he was saying. So it's a different time to now.
Looking back at your Williams period, what was your favourite car?
I think that the FW07, because it obviously was the most successful, and it lasted for 3 years in a slowly evolving style. It was a huge step forward from where we were before, and I think it obviously was based a lot on what the Lotus 79 taught us beforehand, but I think it was engineered in a lot better manner and more practical, so its performance was higher, and it was a better car to work on, I think.
Yeah, and in a nutshell, it was a much stiffer car than the 79, and it actually had its skirts on the road in a much more sanitary way than the Ligiers, for example, over a season. Were they two aspects that were in the minds of engineers like yourself at the start of the year, or did that just happen because of the quality of the engineering?
No, it was conceived as a stiff car. I mean, the Lotus 79, I think, was basically a single skin aluminium, whereas ours was a full honeycomb monocoque structure. Again, that was Patrick's baby, really. He was the chassis designer. But I think probably more important was that the skirts worked properly. I think the Lotus ones were absolutely awful. You could just go and watch them on the corner on the circuit, and they were all over the place. And I think just having the consistency of downforce.
And also Ligier started the year with great skirts, but after a while, because they actually had some chassis flexing as well, the skirts started to lift too from about mid-season.
Yeah, which because of the total downforce we had then made a massive difference. And I think also having the centre of pressure in the right place and not moving around as the car moved up and down was quite important. And I think that's, again, Williams was very good because it became very predictable to drive. And I think when you've got that level of commitment that you need to attack the corners with that level of downforce, it's important that the car does exactly what the driver thinks it's going to do. And I think that was really one of our strong points.
As a race engineer, the pole lap that meant the most to you?
I'd say definitely Monza in 1981. That was with Carlos, but obviously we had a Cosworth engine car competing against a number of turbo cars.
And you had no front wing on the car?
No front wing. He was actually second there rather than pole, but I think to me that was
Arnoux was on the pole, I think.
Yeah. As good as a pole, considering what the opposition was. And we'd had a fantastic test there a couple of weeks before, when it was just Williams running a single car, and we just honed the car to perfection and allowed it to be really competitive. I mean, the biggest shame was it just started to drizzle as we were sat on the grid, and that's what really lost our.
Well, there was a confusion over tyre choice and compounds then, wasn't there?
Yeah, so the race didn't quite pan out as well.
But he was flat through the second Losmo at a time when the second Losmo was a serious corner.
Yeah, he was, yeah. That was a good memory from that race, I think, yeah.